The night sky has always been a source of mystery and wonder. As we gaze upward, we are reminded of the vastness of the universe, an immense, uncharted expanse that seems to stretch on forever. It's easy to feel small, insignificant, and yet there is a fascination within us, an innate curiosity that compels us to look up and ask, are we truly alone? This question has lingered in the hearts and minds of humanity for centuries, but it wasn't until the 20th century that we began to see a dramatic shift in the way we considered the possibility of extraterrestrial life. The idea that life beyond Earth might exist, that we might not be the only conscious beings in this boundless universe, became increasingly plausible. UFO sightings, or unidentified flying objects, began to capture public attention, not just as strange anomalies in the sky, but as potential evidence of something far beyond our earthly understanding. For many, UFOs represent a symbol of mystery, the unknown, and the unexplained. But for others, these strange sightings are more than just passing curiosities. They are tangible phenomena that hint at a much deeper reality, one that could challenge everything we think we know about life, technology, and even the very nature of existence. As early as the 1940s and 1950s, strange flying objects were being reported by military personnel, pilots, and civilians alike. These reports were dismissed by some, regarded as hoaxes or misidentified weather phenomena. But for others, the question was far more profound. What if these objects weren't just a figment of imagination? What if they represented something real, something beyond our understanding? Over time, the sheer volume and consistency of UFO sightings around the world became impossible to ignore. And yet, the response from the U.S. government and military was often shrouded in secrecy, dismissing the majority of reports as misidentifications or even simple cases of mass hysteria. However, in recent decades, something remarkable has happened. A shift has occurred not only in the public's perception of UFOs, but also in how government agencies approach the phenomenon. Thanks to decades of research, whistleblowers, and declassified documents, we now have access to information that was once hidden away in the vaults of intelligence agencies and government archives. These declassified UFO encounters are a fascinating glimpse into the unknown, providing an official record of incidents that had previously been classified as top secret or even denied entirely. One of the most striking aspects of these declassified documents is how they reveal a tension between what the government and military are willing to acknowledge publicly and what individuals, both civilian and military personnel, experienced firsthand. Time and again, official reports have dismissed UFO sightings, offering explanations that range from natural phenomena to classified military technology. Yet, many of the eyewitness accounts paint a very different picture. They describe objects that defy conventional explanation, moving in ways that no known aircraft can, exhibiting capabilities that seem to transcend the limits of human technology. These personal testimonies carry weight, for they come from individuals who, by their very roles in society, are typically reliable and trustworthy. Pilots, radar operators, and military personnel who have encountered these objects often find themselves caught between duty and the compelling truth of their experiences. Their stories often contradict official narratives, creating a deep sense of intrigue that continues to captivate those who hear them. In many ways, the journey into the world of declassified UFO encounters is one that takes us down a path not just of uncovering hidden truths, but of exploring the tension between the known and the unknown. It is a journey that is not just about the mysteries of alien encounters, but also about the nature of government secrecy, the psychology of eyewitness testimony, and the ways in which cultures shape and are shaped by these phenomena. Each new piece of information, each new report, opens up a world of possibilities and questions that, despite the advancements in science and technology, we have yet to fully answer. For example, consider the case of the 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO sightings. Thousands of people, including military personnel and civilians, reported seeing strange lights in the sky over several nights. What made this event particularly significant was not only the large number of eyewitnesses, but also the fact that the objects were tracked on radar by the U.S. military. Yet, Despite the overwhelming evidence, the official government response was to downplay the incident, offering little in terms of explanation. Eyewitnesses, however, described objects that seemed to defy the laws of physics, moving with such speed and precision that they couldn't have been anything of human origin. This encounter, along with many others, continues to fuel debates about the nature of UFOs and the possibility that the government may not be telling the whole truth. In recent years, the declassification of military and intelligence reports has brought new light to these mysteries. Documents from the Pentagon, along with video footage taken by Navy pilots, have opened up discussions about unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, a term that has replaced UFO in official circles. What is most striking about these revelations is not just the acknowledgement of strange objects in our skies, but the fact that the U.S. government now admits it cannot explain some of these encounters. For many, this shift represents a paradigm change, a recognition that there are things in the sky that our current technology and understanding of physics simply cannot explain. But why did it take so long for the government to release this information? And what does it mean for the future of UFO research? These are questions that many researchers, journalists, and citizens have been grappling with for decades. Some argue that the government's slow disclosure of these incidents is part of a larger effort to control the narrative, to slowly prepare the public for a truth that may be difficult to accept. Others believe that these declassified documents are simply the tip of the iceberg, and that much more information remains hidden from the public eye. In this script, we will explore the most notable and credible UFO encounters that have been declassified, shedding light on these mysterious events and the individuals involved. From the early sightings in the 1950s to the most recent U.S. government investigations into UAPs, we will delve into the stories, the evidence, and the questions that remain unanswered. Each case offers a unique glimpse into the world of UFOs, providing insights not only into the phenomenon itself, but also into how governments, militaries, and individuals react when faced with something that lies beyond their understanding. What is most striking about these encounters is how they reflect the inherent tension between the desire for secrecy and the search for truth. For decades, the official stance on UFOs was to deny, dismiss, or downplay them. Yet with the release of declassified information, we see a shift in that narrative, a slow but steady move toward transparency, or at least partial disclosure. This shift raises important questions about why these mysteries were hidden for so long, and what the consequences of their revelation might be. Are we on the brink of discovering something extraordinary, something that will change our understanding of the universe? Or are we simply peering into a mystery that may never be fully solved? As we begin this exploration, it's important to remember that the pursuit of truth, especially when it comes to something as elusive and mysterious as UFOs, is a journey, one that requires patience, an open mind, and a willingness to confront the unknown. Each new encounter, each declassified document, brings us one step closer to unraveling this enigma. But whether we will ever truly understand the nature of these encounters, or whether they will remain a mystery, is something only time will tell. In the meantime, we continue to look up, to wonder, and to seek answers to questions that have captivated humanity for generations. The years following World War II marked a profound shift in global geopolitics, as two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, emerged as the primary contenders in what would come to be known as the Cold War. The ideological and military rivalry between these two nations created an atmosphere of tension, suspicion, and fear, and it was within this volatile environment that UFOs began to make their presence known in the skies. For the first time in human history, advanced technology had the potential to bring about the destruction of entire civilizations, and the world had just witnessed the terrifying power of atomic weapons. The Cold War backdrop created fertile ground for the kinds of strange, unexplained phenomena that would come to be known as UFOs, but it also shaped the way these encounters were perceived, investigated, and reported. At the heart of this new global conflict was a deep-rooted fear of espionage, technological superiority, and the constant need to assert dominance in every possible sphere, military, scientific, and even ideological. As both superpowers developed and tested new weapons and aircraft, it was only natural that military observers and civilians alike would report strange objects in the sky. The fact that many of these objects appeared to defy the capabilities of known aircraft, moving at incredible speeds, changing direction at impossible angles, or disappearing from radar screens, added an element of mystery that would captivate the public imagination. The first significant UFO sightings that occurred after the war were primarily seen as curiosities, but they quickly became intertwined with the cultural and political anxieties of the time. It's important to remember that the Cold War was defined by constant surveillance, paranoia, and secrecy. The idea that something or someone might be watching from above was not only unsettling, but deeply unsettling in the context of the era's fears of nuclear war and espionage. What made these early UFO sightings so significant was not only the mystery of the objects themselves, but the fact that they occurred in an atmosphere already charged with fear and suspicion. It was in the late 1940s and early 1950s that the U.S. government, along with other Western nations, began to take UFO sightings more seriously, though their reactions varied. One of the most pivotal moments in the early history of UFOs was the 1947 sighting by pilot Kenneth Arnold. Arnold, flying over the Cascade Mountains in Washington state, described seeing 9 crescent-shaped objects flying at incredible speeds. He later famously described their movement as like a saucer skipping across water, which led to the popularization of the term flying saucer. Though Arnold's sighting was not the first of its kind, it marked a turning point in public perception, triggering a media frenzy and spurring further UFO reports across the country. The U.S. Air Force, at the time primarily concerned with the defense of the nation against potential Soviet threats, began to take these reports more seriously, though their approach was far from transparent. As sightings continued to increase, the U.S. government established Project Sign in 1948, a secret program aimed at investigating these mysterious objects. The project was the first of several official U.S. efforts to determine the nature of UFOs and to assess the potential threat they posed to national security. Initially, Project Sign's researchers were open to the possibility that these objects could be extraterrestrial in origin, a notion that would later be abandoned in favor of more conventional explanations. However, as more reports came in, the government found itself caught in a complex web of intrigue, secrecy, and public interest. The Cold War was a time when secrecy and propaganda were essential tools for maintaining national security and political stability. Governments had to manage not only military operations, but also public perception. In the U.S., the notion that UFOs could represent something beyond the conventional understanding of physics, something foreign or even extraterrestrial, was a concept that threatened to undermine the carefully constructed narrative of American superiority and scientific control. To suggest that advanced beings from another world were capable of surpassing humanity's technological capabilities was an unsettling idea in a time when the U.S. was striving to assert itself as the dominant global power. At the same time, these mysterious objects in the sky were being watched with suspicion by American officials, who feared that the Soviet Union might be testing advanced weaponry or reconnaissance techniques. The Cold War paranoia was palpable, and it wasn't hard to imagine that these flying objects, often reported as moving erratically or performing feats of flight that no known human-made aircraft could manage, might be part of an advanced Soviet program. In fact, some UFO sightings were indeed explained away by the U.S. government as potential Soviet aircraft. The U.S. military was also highly concerned with the possibility that some of these sightings could be experimental aircraft, not just from the Soviets, but also from German scientists brought to the U.S. under Operation Paperclip, who were working on cutting-edge technologies. These factors all contributed to a climate where every unexplained sighting carried the weight of suspicion, and the truth behind the encounters seemed always just out of reach. In 1952, UFO sightings reached a peak in Washington, D.C., where a series of strange lights were seen flying over the nation's capital. The events were observed by numerous people, including military personnel, radar operators, and civilians. This incident, now known as the 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO incident, is one of the most well-documented and widely discussed UFO events in history. What made this event particularly significant was not only the large number of eyewitnesses, but the fact that the objects were tracked by radar, confirmed visually by military personnel, and even intercepted by jet fighters. Despite all this, the U.S. government's response was to dismiss the incident, downplaying it as the result of weather phenomena or misidentified aircraft. This dismissal, combined with the lack of transparency, led to widespread public skepticism and gave rise to numerous conspiracy theories that suggested the government was hiding something. The military's reluctance to acknowledge the reality of UFOs, especially in the context of Cold War tensions, reflected a deeper concern. How could the U.S. government explain these mysterious objects without causing panic or revealing vulnerabilities in national defense systems? The idea of UFOs potentially being extraterrestrial in origin was not just a scientific question. It was a matter of national security. If these objects were truly alien, it would suggest that humanity was not alone, and that our understanding of the universe, and our place within it, was fundamentally flawed. The implications were enormous. Yet, despite the government's best efforts to control the narrative, UFO sightings continued to rise, with more and more reports pouring in from civilians, military personnel, and even pilots. And while some of these sightings could be dismissed as misidentifications or natural phenomena, there remained a significant number of encounters that defied easy explanation. In fact, it was the sheer persistence and consistency of these reports that made UFOs so compelling. Time and again, eyewitnesses described objects that moved in ways that no human-made aircraft could replicate. Some UFOs were reported to travel at speeds that surpassed the capabilities of the fastest jets, while others would hover in place before disappearing at incredible rates. It was as though these objects were not bound by the same rules of physics that govern everything else. The Cold War not only shaped the way the world viewed UFOs, but also how these phenomena were interpreted and dealt with. The government, in particular, was caught in a delicate balancing act, attempting to investigate the phenomena while simultaneously managing public reaction and avoiding political fallout. The ambiguity surrounding UFOs, particularly in the early years, led to a range of theories, from government cover-ups to extraterrestrial visitations, and fueled an ongoing sense of mystery that would only deepen as the Cold War progressed. As the 1950s came to a close, the relationship between the U.S. government and UFOs remained one of cautious investigation and deliberate obfuscation. The idea of extraterrestrial life was still a concept that the government was reluctant to entertain, but the rise of UFO sightings and the involvement of military personnel in these encounters pushed the topic further into the public consciousness. By the time the U.S. entered the 1960s, UFOs had become a part of a cultural landscape, woven into the fabric of Cold War anxieties and conspiracy theories, setting the stage for the decades of intrigue and mystery that would follow. In the context of this complex and charged era, the Cold War served as both a backdrop and a catalyst for the UFO phenomenon. It shaped the way people viewed the strange objects in the sky, framing them as potential threats, as symbols of the unknown, or as possible proof of something greater than ourselves. The government's response to these encounters, shrouded in secrecy and often contradictory, only served to deepen the mystery. And as we look back on these early UFO sightings, it's clear that the Cold War not only influenced how the public reacted to UFOs, but also how these phenomena would evolve into one of the greatest mysteries of our time. On the night of July 19, 1952, an event unfolded over the skies of Washington, D.C., that would forever change the way the public and the U.S. government viewed UFOs. This wasn't just another sighting. It was a series of encounters so bizarre and so well documented that they would become one of the most significant UFO incidents in history. It would mark the first time that the U.S. military, along with numerous civilian witnesses, would be forced to confront an encounter with an unidentified flying object on a scale previously unseen. The Washington, D.C. UFO incident, often referred to as the 1952 D.C. UFO sighting, would captivate the nation and fuel intense debates that continue to this day. The story begins in the summer of 1952, a time when the Cold War was in full swing and the threat of Soviet espionage and nuclear war loomed large. The political and military tension of the period undoubtedly set the stage for the heightened sensitivity to any potential threat, particularly from the skies. So when multiple unidentified objects appeared in the skies over Washington, D.C. on that fateful summer night, the U.S. military's radar operators and air traffic controllers were on high alert. What began as a single report from an air traffic controller at Washington National Airport quickly spiraled into a series of sightings, witnessed by several more air traffic controllers, military radar operators, and pilots from the U.S. Air Force. The first radar detection occurred at 11:40 p.m. when a radar operator at the National Airport detected a strange object near the airport's vicinity. At first, it was assumed that the object might be a conventional aircraft, but it soon became clear that something extraordinary was taking place. The object appeared to move in ways that defied the known capabilities of any aircraft in service at the time. It moved at speeds far faster than anything in the U.S. military's arsenal, making sharp turns and sudden changes in altitude. As the operator tracked the object on radar, other strange sightings began to emerge. Simultaneously, a second radar operator at Andrews Air Force Base, located just outside the capital, detected several more objects in the vicinity. These objects weren't simply visible on radar. They were moving erratically and at incredible speeds, displaying flight characteristics that seemed beyond the capabilities of known aircraft. The radar operators were baffled, as the objects did not resemble any aircraft they had encountered before. To make matters even more perplexing, when fighter jets were scrambled to investigate, they found nothing visually, even though the radar screens still showed the same mysterious objects. This discrepancy between radar and visual confirmation would become one of the key aspects of the case that puzzled investigators and witnesses alike. As the hours passed, the objects on the radar seemed to multiply, and more reports came in from eyewitnesses who had seen strange lights in the sky. The objects reportedly appeared as bright, round lights that moved in unpredictable patterns, often hovering before accelerating at incredible speeds. The lights were described as flying saucers due to their appearance and the way they seemed to skip through the sky, almost like a stone skipping across water. This description would eventually lead to the widespread use of the term flying saucer in popular culture, a phrase that would become synonymous with UFOs in the years that followed. What was even more perplexing was the fact that the sightings weren't confined to just one area. In the days that followed the initial encounter, the objects were seen not only over Washington, D.C., but also over neighboring areas in Maryland and Virginia. The sheer scale of the sightings and the fact that they occurred in such a heavily populated and sensitive area, right in the heart of the U.S. government, made the event particularly significant. It was one thing for UFOs to appear over remote areas, but it was entirely another for them to be seen over the nation's capital, where the highest levels of government and military personnel were stationed. As reports continued to flood in, military authorities scrambled to make sense of what was happening. Fighter jets were again scrambled, and this time, pilots were able to visually track some of the objects. However, when the jets approached the UFOs, they suddenly disappeared, only to reappear minutes later on radar. This pattern of playing cat and mouse with the military jets became a defining characteristic of the sightings. The objects would appear on radar, disappear from view, and then return, often in a completely different location. The objects seemed to have a technology and maneuverability that was beyond anything the U.S. military possessed. In response to the growing number of reports and the inability of the military to explain the phenomenon, the U.S. Air Force launched an official investigation into the sightings. The incident was investigated under Project Blue Book, a top-secret U.S. Air Force program established to study UFOs and determine their origins. However, the government's official stance was that the sightings were likely caused by natural phenomena, such as temperature inversions, or that the objects were merely misidentified aircraft. The public was given the explanation that the sightings were nothing more than weather phenomena, a theory that was hard to accept given the sheer number of credible eyewitnesses and the radar data that corroborated their accounts. Despite these official statements, the witnesses who had seen the objects firsthand were not so easily convinced. Among the most compelling accounts came from the radar operators and military pilots who had witnessed the strange objects with their own eyes. One radar operator, who had tracked the object for hours, was adamant that they were not conventional aircraft. Military pilots, who had attempted to intercept the objects, described them as moving in ways that no known aircraft could, and their evasive maneuvers left even experienced pilots in awe. One pilot famously described seeing a bright light in the sky that he was unable to catch, despite flying at full speed. The fact that these objects could evade trained pilots and the most advanced radar systems of the time was an unsettling reality that no simple explanation could resolve. The Washington, D.C. UFO incident was more than just an isolated event. It was a turning point in how the U.S. government, the military, and the public would view UFOs in the years that followed. It marked the first time that UFOs were taken seriously enough by the U.S. government to warrant an official investigation. It was also the moment when the government's response to UFOs would begin to shift from outright dismissal to something more cautious and calculated. The official explanations, weather phenomena, and misidentified aircraft, did little to quell public curiosity, and in many ways, they only deepened the mystery. The fact that the sightings were concentrated over the nation's capital added a layer of intrigue, suggesting that these objects, whatever they were, might be watching the very heart of the U.S. government. In the years following the 1952 D.C. UFO sightings, the incident would become a key moment in the larger UFO phenomenon, influencing both public opinion and the government's handling of UFO reports. It would spark a wave of interest in UFOs and extraterrestrial life, giving rise to a plethora of new theories about what these objects could be. Some believed that they were extraterrestrial spacecraft, others that they were secret military craft or advanced Soviet technology, and still others that they were the result of some unknown natural phenomenon. What the 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO incident made clear, however, was that the world was dealing with something that could not be easily explained away. The incident would lay the groundwork for decades of investigation, speculation, and fascination with the unknown. To this day, the Washington, D.C. UFO incident remains one of the most compelling and well-documented UFO sightings in history. The combination of multiple radar detections, eyewitness testimonies, and military involvement has made it an essential case study in the ongoing quest to understand UFOs. And while the official explanations have done little to diminish the mystery, they have only fueled further curiosity. What were the objects seen over Washington, D.C. that night? Were they truly extraterrestrial in origin, or were they something else entirely? As time passes, the answers to these questions remain elusive, and the mystery of the 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO incident continues to captivate the imagination of those who seek to uncover the truth about the unknown. In the world of UFO encounters, perhaps no form of evidence carries more weight or stirs more debate than the testimony of those who have witnessed these mysterious events firsthand. Eyewitness accounts, especially those of military personnel, pilots, and civilians who have observed strange phenomena with their own eyes, form the cornerstone of much of the UFO narrative. Yet, while these accounts are often the most compelling and emotional, they are also the most contested, raising questions about perception, memory, and human psychology. What happens when someone experiences something they cannot explain? How does it affect their worldview, their beliefs, and their understanding of reality? One of the most intriguing aspects of UFO encounters is the way they often seem to challenge the laws of physics and human understanding. Objects are reported to move at speeds far beyond the capabilities of known aircraft, making sharp turns and sudden maneuvers that defy explanation. Some witnesses describe objects that appear to change shape, blink in and out of sight, or even hover for extended periods. These first-hand accounts, often detailed and consistent across different observers, have fueled the ongoing fascination with UFOs and the extraterrestrial hypothesis. But what makes these testimonies particularly compelling is not just the strange nature of the object themselves, but the profound impact these encounters have on those who experience them. Take, for example, the account of Captain Edward Ruppelt, who headed the U.S. Air Force's Project Blue Book in the early 1950s. Ruppelt was one of the first military officers to take UFO reports seriously and to investigate them with the intent of finding real answers. He reported numerous encounters with UFOs during his time at Project Blue Book, and his detailed descriptions of these experiences remain some of the most valuable insights into the military's early investigations. But what is particularly fascinating about Ruppelt's accounts is how they reflect the mental and emotional toll that such experiences can take on the witnesses. As Ruppelt himself acknowledged, the UFO phenomenon was something that could not be easily dismissed. He had seen enough first-hand evidence to know that something extraordinary was happening, yet the lack of conclusive explanations left him, and many others, struggling to make sense of the events. For Ruppelt, the psychological strain of dealing with unexplained phenomena was just as significant as the mystery itself. Eyewitness testimonies are also profoundly significant because they provide a window into the human experience of encountering the unknown. People who have witnessed UFOs often describe feeling a range of intense emotions: fear, awe, confusion, even euphoria. The profound nature of the encounter can be life-changing, as it forces individuals to confront the possibility that their understanding of reality and of human existence might be flawed. In some cases, these experiences lead people to question their beliefs about the world, while in others, they inspire a lifelong fascination with the unknown. But regardless of how individuals interpret their experiences, one common thread runs through most UFO encounters: a deep sense of wonder mixed with an overwhelming sense of uncertainty. The psychological impact of UFO encounters cannot be overstated. Some witnesses experience what could be described as a form of cognitive dissonance, struggling to reconcile what they saw with their prior beliefs and understanding of the world. A common response to such encounters is to try to explain away the experience, whether by attributing it to a natural phenomenon, a misidentification, or a trick of the mind. For many, it's simply too difficult to accept the idea that they may have witnessed something truly extraordinary. This reluctance to accept the reality of their experience can lead to feelings of isolation, as many witnesses feel that others will not believe them. In some cases, witnesses are even ridiculed or dismissed by their peers, which only adds to the emotional strain of the experience. In contrast, others who have experienced UFO encounters embrace their experiences as evidence of something much larger than themselves. They may feel a sense of connection to a greater mystery, a sense that they have been touched by something beyond human understanding. Some witnesses describe their encounters as spiritual or transformative, with the experience leaving them with a lasting sense of awe and a deepened sense of the unknown. These individuals often go on to become advocates for UFO research, determined to find answers and share their stories with others. The range of emotional and psychological responses to UFO encounters highlights the profound effect these experiences can have on individuals, shaping their lives in ways that cannot easily be explained. The emotional responses to UFO sightings are not limited to individual witnesses. In many cases, entire communities have been affected by mass sightings, where multiple people have witnessed the same or similar phenomena at the same time. One of the most famous cases of this phenomenon occurred in 1966, when hundreds of residents in Westall, Australia, observed a flying object that hovered over the town for several minutes before disappearing into the distance. The object was seen by school children, teachers, and adults alike, and the sightings were reported by multiple credible witnesses. Yet, despite the large number of people who witnessed the event, there was a concerted effort by local authorities and the government to downplay the incident and dismiss it as a misidentification of a weather balloon. In the aftermath of the sighting, many of the witnesses were left with a sense of confusion and frustration, as their collective experience was dismissed as inconclusive. Mass sightings like the one in Westall highlight another important aspect of UFO encounters: the social and cultural dynamics of belief. When large groups of people witness the same phenomenon, it becomes more difficult to explain the experience away as a shared hallucination or mistake. Eyewitness testimony in these instances carries more weight, as the consistency of the reports from different witnesses can help build a case for the reality of the event. Yet, even in the face of compelling collective testimony, societal skepticism remains a powerful force, and UFO sightings are often met with ridicule or indifference. This skepticism can have a profound effect on witnesses, leading them to second-guess their own perceptions and, in some cases, suppress their memories of the event entirely. This psychological effect is particularly evident in the case of military personnel and pilots who have encountered UFOs. Military personnel, who are trained to be observant and analytical, often report UFOs with a high degree of detail and specificity. Yet even among these highly trained witnesses, the emotional and psychological impact of a UFO sighting can be profound. For instance, in the 1980 Rendlesham Forest incident in the UK, several military personnel witnessed a strange craft that landed in the forest. Despite the incredible nature of their experiences, many of the witnesses initially struggled to reconcile what they had seen with their military training. Even decades later, some of the individuals involved in the incident continue to grapple with the psychological toll of their encounter, as they have been unable to fully understand what they saw or why it defied all logical explanation. Eyewitness accounts are not only important because they provide a direct link to the UFO phenomenon, but they also offer a unique glimpse into the complex intersection of human psychology, perception, and belief. They force us to confront uncomfortable questions about what we know, what we think we know, and what we are willing to accept as truth. The emotional impact of a UFO sighting can be so powerful that it can alter the course of a person's life, shaping their worldview and motivating them to seek answers that may never fully come. The importance of these testimonies cannot be understated. They remind us that the phenomenon of UFOs is not just a scientific or technological mystery. It is also a deeply human experience, one that touches upon our most fundamental questions about the nature of existence, consciousness, and our place in the universe. While the physical evidence for UFOs may be elusive, the emotional and psychological impact of these encounters is undeniable. And as long as people continue to report sightings, the power of their personal stories will remain at the heart of the ongoing search for answers to the mysteries of the unknown. When it comes to UFO sightings, the response from both government entities and the media has often been one of skepticism, secrecy, and, at times, active disinformation. This reaction is rooted in a combination of national security concerns, a desire to maintain control over public perception, and the challenge of addressing phenomena that fundamentally question accepted scientific understanding. The 1950s marked the beginning of this complex dynamic, a period when the United States government, in particular, found itself grappling with the reality of UFO sightings while simultaneously seeking to downplay or even dismiss their significance. The way the government responded to UFO encounters would shape not only public perception, but also the broader narrative about UFOs for decades to come. One of the key factors influencing the government's approach to UFOs in the post-World War II era was the Cold War. During this time, the U.S. government was focused on maintaining national security and preventing the spread of Soviet influence. Given the technological arms race between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, any anomalous objects appearing in American airspace were seen as potential threats, whether they were advanced Soviet aircraft or something entirely unknown. The fear of espionage and the possibility that the Soviet Union had developed new and highly advanced technologies made UFOs a highly sensitive issue. Initially, the U.S. military was inclined to take UFO reports seriously, especially after the 1947 Kenneth Arnold sighting, which sparked widespread public interest in flying saucers. In response to this growing phenomenon, the U.S. Air Force established Project Sign in 1948, the first official government investigation into UFOs. Project Sign's mission was to investigate the increasing number of UFO reports, but it quickly became clear that the objects being reported did not conform to any known aircraft, whether military or civilian. Some members of the project even speculated that the objects could be extraterrestrial in origin. However, as the project progressed, a more cautious stance emerged, and the possibility of UFOs being alien craft was officially rejected. Instead, the Air Force began to look for more conventional explanations, such as misidentified aircraft, weather phenomena, or hoaxes. Project Sign was followed by the more well-known Project Blue Book, which was established in 1952. Blue Book was tasked with collecting UFO reports and analyzing them. It would go on to become the most extensive and public investigation of UFOs in U.S. history, documenting over 12,000 sightings during its existence. The official stance of the U.S. government, however, was clear. UFOs were not considered a serious threat. Rather than acknowledging the possibility of extraterrestrial encounters, the government tended to dismiss most sightings as misidentifications of known objects or optical illusions. Even when evidence such as radar data and multiple eyewitness accounts seemed to support the existence of strange flying objects, the official position remained one of skepticism. One of the most significant examples of the government's attempts to dismiss UFO sightings was the 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO incident, where multiple radar operators, military personnel, and civilians observed objects in the sky. Despite radar tracking and visual confirmations by trained military pilots, the official response was to suggest that the objects were merely weather phenomena or a result of radar malfunctions. This response is typical of the broader government strategy at the time: minimize public concern, control the narrative, and avoid acknowledging the possibility that UFOs might be something beyond conventional understanding. In many ways, the government's handling of these incidents reflected its broader Cold War priorities: maintaining control over public perception, ensuring that national security was not jeopardized, and avoiding panic. The media's response to UFO sightings was similarly complicated. In the early days of the UFO phenomenon, the media was instrumental in fueling public interest. The 1947 Kenneth Arnold sighting, for example, was widely covered in newspapers and on radio, and the term flying saucer quickly entered the American lexicon. UFOs became a sensation, with people all over the country reporting strange lights and objects in the sky. For a time, the media played an essential role in shaping public opinion, both sensationalizing and normalizing the idea that UFOs were real phenomena. However, as the government's official stance on UFOs became more dismissive, the media began to reflect this shift. The government's message that UFOs were not a serious threat or a legitimate mystery began to seep into the media coverage, influencing how UFO sightings were reported. By the late 1950s and early 1960s, many mainstream outlets began to treat UFO reports with skepticism, often attributing them to hoaxes or psychological phenomena like mass hysteria. Newspapers and news outlets that once sensationalized UFO sightings now downplayed their significance, contributing to a public perception that UFOs were a fringe topic reserved for conspiracy theorists and the easily swayed. The media's relationship with the UFO phenomenon became even more complex as the government began to employ disinformation campaigns. One of the most infamous examples of this is the way the government handled the 1967 Shag Harbor UFO incident in Canada. After reports of a strange craft crashing into the waters off the coast of Nova Scotia, military officials moved quickly to suppress the details of the event, dismissing the witnesses' accounts and providing contradictory explanations. In cases like this, the government's goal was clear: to prevent the spread of information that could raise public anxiety or disrupt the status quo. The public was consistently told that there was nothing extraordinary to see, and that UFO sightings were the result of misidentifications, imagination, or hoaxes. This pattern of denial and secrecy, however, did not prevent the UFO phenomenon from continuing to capture public attention. While the government worked to suppress and dismiss reports, the number of sightings continued to grow. Eyewitnesses, including military personnel, pilots, and ordinary citizens, kept coming forward with detailed accounts of strange objects they had seen in the sky. Despite the government's attempts to control the narrative, these personal testimonies provided the only evidence that something anomalous was happening. And as more and more people shared their experiences, the story of UFOs became harder to ignore. In the 1970s and 1980s, the rise of the modern UFO research movement brought new attention to these encounters. Organizations such as MUFON Mutual UFO Network began to document and investigate UFO sightings independently, challenging the government's official stance and presenting alternative explanations. Researchers and enthusiasts began to question why the government was so determined to downplay UFO encounters and why it seemed unwilling to entertain the possibility that extraterrestrial life might be involved. As public interest in UFOs grew, so too did the speculation about government cover-ups and the suppression of information. This period saw the emergence of conspiracy theories suggesting that the government was hiding evidence of extraterrestrial encounters, perhaps even engaging in secret dealings with alien species. The government's continued reluctance to release information about UFOs only added fuel to these theories. Despite growing pressure for transparency, the government continued to classify UFO-related documents, leading to accusations that it was hiding the truth from the public. In 1979, a former government employee named Philip J. Klass, who had been one of the leading skeptics of UFOs, published a book claiming that the government had been involved in an elaborate cover-up, actively suppressing information about UFOs. Klass's book became a key text in the growing body of literature surrounding government disinformation and conspiracy theories. Even as late as the 1990s and early 2000s, the government maintained its stance of secrecy surrounding UFOs, with public officials continuing to dismiss UFO sightings as unreliable or hoaxes. The media, too, largely followed the government's lead, with most mainstream outlets treating the UFO phenomenon as a topic unworthy of serious discussion. However, in recent years, the tone has begun to shift. In 2017, the New York Times published a groundbreaking article revealing the Pentagon's secret UFO program, known as the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP. This marked a dramatic shift in the government's handling of UFOs, with military officials acknowledging the existence of encounters that could not be easily explained. The release of military footage of UFOs by the U.S. Navy in 2020 further pushed the narrative into the mainstream, sparking new discussions about the nature of these phenomena and their implications. Today, the government's stance on UFOs is shifting toward greater openness, with the Department of Defense and other agencies acknowledging the reality of unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP. This new approach reflects the changing cultural and political climate surrounding UFOs, as public interest continues to grow, and new questions about the origins and nature of these encounters emerge. While the full truth remains elusive, the changing responses from the government and media represent a pivotal moment in the ongoing UFO mystery. As UFO sightings continued to proliferate throughout the 1950s and beyond, the debate surrounding their origins grew increasingly complex. While the U.S. government and mainstream scientific communities largely dismissed the idea that UFOs could be extraterrestrial in origin, alternative and paranormal theories began to emerge. These unconventional explanations offered new ways of interpreting the strange phenomena witnessed by thousands of people. As mainstream narratives often fell short of providing satisfactory answers, these alternative theories grew in popularity, presenting a fascinating and sometimes unsettling view of the UFO mystery that reached beyond the realm of conventional science. One of the first and most enduring alternative theories is that UFOs could be manifestations of extraterrestrial life. This idea, though initially dismissed by many as far-fetched, became increasingly appealing to both civilians and researchers who sought a more concrete explanation for the strange behaviors exhibited by these unidentified flying objects. Eyewitnesses often reported UFOs exhibiting advanced technology far beyond anything known to human engineering, from the ability to make rapid, sharp turns to hovering in place without any visible means of propulsion. Theories positing that UFOs were ships from distant civilizations, far more technologically advanced than humanity, provided an explanation that not only matched the mysterious nature of the sightings, but also tapped into deeper philosophical and existential questions about humanity's place in the universe. However, this extraterrestrial hypothesis faced significant challenges. One of the key criticisms was a lack of concrete physical evidence to support the idea that these objects were indeed of alien origin. Despite numerous eyewitness accounts, radar data, and photographic evidence, the government and mainstream scientists were unable to find any verifiable proof that the UFOs were anything other than terrestrial phenomena. This lack of definitive proof gave rise to another alternative theory, that UFOs were not alien craft at all, but perhaps something far more bizarre, a manifestation of a parallel dimension, a time slip, or a different form of existence altogether. The notion of parallel dimensions or alternate realities emerged as one of the more speculative but intriguing explanations for UFO encounters. According to this theory, the strange objects observed in the skies might not be from outer space at all. Instead, they could be from parallel universes or alternate timelines. Proponents of this theory argue that what witnesses experience during UFO sightings could be glimpses into another dimension, where the laws of physics operate differently, allowing for the kind of aerial maneuvers and behaviors that UFOs are often described as exhibiting. In this framework, UFOs might not be spaceships, but rather interdimensional travelers, crossing over into our reality through thin places in the fabric of spacetime. These thin places, as some theorists suggest, could be areas where the boundaries between dimensions are especially porous, allowing beings or objects to pass between worlds. A more esoteric theory ties UFOs to paranormal phenomena, suggesting that these encounters might be manifestations of consciousness or psychological phenomena rather than physical objects at all. Some researchers have posited that UFOs could be a projection of the human psyche, appearing to those who are predisposed to see them, either due to a heightened sensitivity to unusual phenomena or a deep-seated belief in the possibility of extraterrestrial contact. This theory delves into the realm of the mind-body connection, where the idea of UFOs might be a shared dreamlike or hallucinatory experience, born out of the collective unconscious. According to this line of thinking, the increasing number of UFO sightings may be linked to psychological shifts in society, particularly during times of great social, political, or cultural stress. As humanity grappled with the existential anxiety of the Cold War and the nuclear age, the unconscious mind might have conjured UFOs as a symbol of both fear and hope, fear of the unknown, and hope for contact with a higher, benevolent intelligence. This psychological interpretation of UFO encounters is not a new one. Throughout history, various cultures have reported sightings of strange, mysterious beings, but these entities were often framed within the context of existing belief systems. In the medieval period, reports of sky chariots or flying fires could be seen as early precursors to modern UFO sightings, albeit interpreted through the lens of religious or spiritual beliefs. As society evolved, so too did the interpretation of these encounters, with UFOs gradually being viewed through a more technological and scientific framework. The modern UFO phenomenon, according to some theorists, is merely the latest iteration of an age-old archetype, one that represents humanity's quest to understand the unknown and confront its deepest existential fears. Other theories take a more metaphysical approach, suggesting that UFOs could be part of a larger cosmic plan or spiritual awakening. Some proponents of this theory believe that UFOs are not simply machines, but beings or intelligences with a higher purpose. According to these ideas, UFOs might be messengers, guiding humanity toward enlightenment or offering contact with a higher state of existence. This theory finds support in some of the more mystical accounts of UFO encounters, where witnesses report not only seeing strange objects, but also experiencing a profound shift in consciousness. In some cases, witnesses have described a feeling of peace, tranquility, or even a sense of cosmic oneness during or after a UFO encounter. These experiences, it is argued, might represent the human species being prepared for a greater transformation, one that transcends the physical world and moves into the realm of the metaphysical. A further extension of this spiritual theory ties UFOs to the concept of ancient civilizations and lost knowledge. Some theorists suggest that UFOs may be connected to a forgotten history of Earth, where advanced civilizations, perhaps from our own distant past, once had the ability to travel in the skies or even beyond the Earth's atmosphere. These civilizations, according to this view, could have had contact with extraterrestrial beings or may have been visited by alien intelligences long before humanity entered its modern technological age. In this interpretation, UFOs are not just symbols of a possible future, but echoes of a lost history, a reminder that we are not the first advanced civilization to inhabit the planet. The mystery of UFOs, then, is a key to unlocking the forgotten knowledge of our ancestors, a hidden truth that has been suppressed or lost over the millennia. While many of these theories lie on the fringe of mainstream thought, they have nonetheless captivated the imagination of countless individuals and groups over the years. UFO enthusiasts, paranormal researchers, and conspiracy theorists alike have embraced these alternative explanations, searching for evidence and crafting elaborate narratives that tie UFOs to everything from government cover-ups to ancient prophecies. The persistence of these alternative theories speaks to the enduring mystery of UFOs and humanity's collective desire to understand the unknown. One of the more compelling aspects of these alternative theories is the way they intersect with cultural beliefs and societal anxieties. UFOs are not merely a scientific or technological mystery. They are a reflection of our collective hopes, fears, and aspirations. Whether as a symbol of the potential for alien contact, a manifestation of human consciousness, or a projection of humanity's spiritual yearning, UFOs remain a powerful symbol of the unknown. They challenge our understanding of reality, forcing us to confront our assumptions about the limits of human knowledge and the possibility of life beyond Earth. In recent years, the growing popularity of these theories has led to an increased interest in UFOs as a topic of serious academic and scientific inquiry. While the mainstream scientific community has largely remained skeptical of the idea that UFOs represent extraterrestrial visitation, there has been a growing recognition of the need to investigate the phenomenon with an open mind. As the military's acknowledgement of unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, has become more widespread, the search for alternative explanations continues to evolve, incorporating elements of both scientific research and speculative inquiry. Theories that once seemed far-fetched or absurd are now being explored with renewed interest, as the boundaries between the known and the unknown continue to blur. While no definitive answers have emerged, the search for unconventional explanations offers a rich and fascinating avenue of exploration, one that reflects humanity's enduring curiosity about the cosmos and our place within it. The mystery of UFOs, whether they are extraterrestrial ships, interdimensional travelers, or manifestations of the human mind, continues to captivate and intrigue, offering a tantalizing glimpse into a world that lies just beyond the reach of our understanding. The phenomenon of UFOs has not only shaped scientific and governmental discourse, but has also had a profound influence on culture, art, and popular media, altering how society views the unknown and the mysteries of the universe. From a moment that UFOs began to appear in the public consciousness in the late 1940s, their influence on literature, film, music, and even social movements has been undeniable. UFOs became a cultural touchstone, an idea that simultaneously captured the imagination and provoked fear. This section delves into the ways in which UFOs have impacted society and media, shaping everything from the narratives we tell about our world to our collective understanding of life beyond Earth. The early days of the UFO phenomenon, particularly in the 1940s and 1950s, saw a rapid shift in cultural attitudes toward the unknown. Following the 1947 Kenneth Arnold sighting, which is widely credited with sparking the modern UFO craze, sightings of unidentified flying objects seemed to spread across the globe. People were no longer just observing strange phenomena in the sky. They were imagining a larger story, one that involved visitors from far-off worlds. UFOs were no longer just anomalous sightings. They were a cultural event. The idea of extraterrestrial life was no longer something relegated to science fiction. It had become a possibility in the minds of the public. This shift in thinking was reflected in the explosion of UFO-related literature, art, and media. UFOs quickly entered the realm of fiction, with writers, filmmakers, and artists seizing on the idea of alien encounters. The 1950s, in particular, was a golden age for UFO-themed cinema. The decade saw the release of numerous films, many of which reflected the cultural anxieties of the time, particularly the fear of the unknown and the threat of nuclear war. The classic 1951 film The Day the Earth Stood Still captured the fear and fascination that UFOs inspired, portraying an alien visitor who warns humanity of its self-destructive tendencies and the dangers of atomic power. The film and others like it framed UFOs not as a benign or neutral presence, but as a potential force of either salvation or destruction. This duality between fear and hope became a hallmark of the UFO genre in film, laying the groundwork for how future generations would interpret alien visitation. The 1950s also saw the rise of the flying saucer trope, popularized by films such as War of the Worlds 1953, which envisioned alien invasions as imminent threats to humanity. These films played on Cold War-era fears of invasion and destruction, with UFOs often depicted as vehicles for hostile alien forces seeking to conquer or annihilate humanity. At the same time, however, a counter-narrative began to emerge, one that depicted extraterrestrial beings as peaceful and benevolent. This dualism in portrayals of UFOs as either dangerous invaders or wise, benevolent beings created a complex and multi-layered understanding of the alien phenomenon in popular culture. The influence of UFOs on popular media extended beyond film and literature. By the late 1950s and early 1960s, UFOs had become a significant subject of interest in comic books, with stories involving alien abductions, space exploration, and cosmic warfare. Characters such as the Flash and Green Lantern would frequently battle alien invaders or team up with extraterrestrial beings, further embedding the idea of UFOs and aliens into the fabric of popular culture. The proliferation of such media helped normalize the idea of extraterrestrial life, transforming it from a fringe theory into a mainstream topic of discussion and imagination. Television played a central role in disseminating the UFO phenomenon to the masses, particularly with the advent of shows like The Twilight Zone and The Outer Limits in the late 1950s and early 1960s. These anthology series often featured UFOs and aliens as key plot elements, with episodes like The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, exploring the paranoia and fear of the unknown in a suburban setting. UFOs became a metaphor for social and political anxieties, and these shows reflected the growing unease with technological advances, nuclear weapons, and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. As the 1960s progressed, the cultural landscape surrounding UFOs shifted. The counterculture movement, with its focus on spirituality, exploration, and expanding consciousness, found a natural ally in the UFO phenomenon. Many young people began to view UFOs not as symbols of fear or invasion, but as symbols of higher wisdom and cosmic unity. The idea that UFOs represented an opportunity for humanity to transcend its earthly limitations gained traction during the late 1960s and early 1970s. Coinciding with the rise of New Age spirituality and interest in Eastern philosophy. UFOs, in this context, were seen not just as visitors from distant stars, but as messengers offering enlightenment and connection to a greater cosmic truth. This shift in perspective was reflected in the explosion of UFO-related books, documentaries, and public conferences in the 1970s and 1980s. Prominent figures, such as writer and researcher Whitley Strieber, helped popularize the concept of alien abductions through books like Communion, 1987, which recounted his own personal experience with what he believed were extraterrestrial beings. Strieber's account, which detailed strange encounters with non-human entities, fueled public interest in the abduction phenomenon and cemented UFOs as not just a military or scientific concern, but as a deeply personal, spiritual, and psychological issue for many people. The media's portrayal of UFOs continued to evolve throughout the 1980s and 1990s. While UFO sightings remained a staple of science fiction, they also became increasingly associated with conspiracy theories. The release of information about government cover-ups, most notably in the form of the 1991 Phoenix Lights incident, and the growing body of evidence provided by former military personnel and researchers, led to a resurgence of interest in UFOs as part of a larger governmental conspiracy. The idea that the U.S. government was withholding information about UFOs and extraterrestrial life from the public became a central theme in popular media, with films like Independence Day, 1996, portraying UFOs as the ultimate form of government secrecy and conspiracy. In the 21st century, The advent of the internet and social media transformed the way UFOs were discussed and disseminated. The rise of online communities and forums dedicated to UFO research, along with the widespread availability of videos and photographs, allowed a global audience to share their sightings and theories. The disclosure movement, which advocates for the release of government documents and information related to UFOs, gained significant momentum in the 2000s as public interest in UFOs reached a new high. The release of classified footage by the U.S. Navy in 2017, showing encounters between military personnel and unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, sparked renewed interest in UFOs and UFO-related media. The impact of UFOs on popular media has also extended to a variety of cultural practices, including music and visual art. Bands like Pink Floyd, David Bowie, and the Beatles incorporated themes of extraterrestrial life and UFOs into their work, reflecting the growing cultural fascination with the unknown. Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon, for example, features lyrics that reference space, alienation, and the human experience, while David Bowie's alter ego Ziggy Stardust was an extraterrestrial rock star from another planet, a clear reflection of the cultural climate of the 1970s and the fascination with otherworldly themes. In the realm of visual art, UFOs have become a recurring symbol for artists exploring themes of the unknown, the sublime, and the cosmic. Surrealist artists like Salvador Dali and Giorgio de Chirico often depicted mysterious or dreamlike landscapes, while contemporary artists like Alex Gray have used imagery of UFOs and extraterrestrial beings to explore consciousness, spirituality, and transcendence. The UFO, as a symbol, has transcended its origins as a military or scientific curiosity and has become a deeply ingrained symbol of exploration, mystery, and the possibility of life beyond Earth. UFOs also continue to influence contemporary culture in more subtle ways. The term UFO has become shorthand for anything mysterious, unexplained, or otherworldly. It has become a cultural meme, used in everything from advertising to internet slang, as a symbol of the unknown. Whether it's a playful reference to aliens in a sci-fi TV show or the use of UFOs in fashion and merchandise, the influence of UFOs can be seen in many aspects of modern life. In conclusion, the cultural influence of UFOs has been both profound and pervasive. From the earliest sightings to the present day, UFOs have shaped how we think about the unknown, about life beyond Earth, and about our place in the universe. Whether depicted as harbingers of doom, agents of peace, or simply mysterious anomalies, UFOs have become a symbol of humanity's quest for knowledge and understanding. Their impact on popular culture, from films and television to music and visual art, continues to evolve, reflecting changing societal anxieties, hopes, and dreams. UFOs have not only reshaped how we view the cosmos, but also how we view ourselves and our place in the larger fabric of existence.